This is going to be a bit of a follow-up. So I did the video yesterday about um, come Sunday and the the kind of the philosophical theological journey of Carlton Pearson. What now I want to talk about is why why Orthodox Christians believe in a place called hell. And um, I remember watching a video. It was one of Joe Rogan's, I think, like podcast conversation things. Talking, and whoever the guest was talking about how the world has moved on past the ideas of hell and a devil because we're perfectly capable of rationalizing the evil in the world as the acts solely of humankind, and that hell would be the suffering created by that evil. And I find that to be highly insufficient. And I think that that's a lot of people's idea of that. When you make your life a living hell, that's something that a lot of people along the Carlton Pearson thread will say, is that when Jesus or others in the Bible, Jesus talked about hell more than any other biblical character, but that when he was talking about hell, he was really talking about those consequences, the emotions and the pain, the suffering that is caused by our sin. However, that doesn't account for the fact that God is just. All throughout the Old Testament, when Israel would backslide, God would send a prophet, and you tell him that, do you think that my arm is too short to reach you? That my justice is not going to come after you, essentially. That you just get to do whatever you want. And it's something that these in the inclusionist, or these in this kind of universalist doctrine can't really reconcile, is the idea, because they love to dwell on God's love, but they purposefully avoid the idea that you cannot be loving without also being just, without maintaining standards. And the third thing is that they don't have a scaffold. Without the concept of an eternal judgment, they don't have a scaffold for dealing with the fact that people don't want to stop sinning. In the actual film itself, they deal with this pretty heavily, that through the analog of a character who's a homosexual diagnosed with HIV, and the kind of cascading health issues that follow that. And Carl Pearson keeps telling this character that you can't just do whatever you want. That just because, even though, because clearly still believing that homosexuality is a sin, but the question is, if Muslims, if people in Africa who have never heard of Jesus, just to continue with the arguments that the film itself makes, that the universalist inclusionist doctrine itself makes, if those people, they just go to heaven regardless, if God's love and his blood covers literally everyone regardless of their behavior, their choices, their decisions, then why not engage in any behavior that the Bible calls sin? Because you're just going to go to heaven anyway. Why not have the cake and eat it too? And it shows kind of the hopelessness or the pointlessness of this doctrinal point, that there's no reason not to. Because it's something we deal with spoiled children now, like that. You see the kid that's screaming in the grocery store, that no matter what, kid's gonna get what he wants. Mom might try to put it off for a little while, try to placate, try to, here's the phone, here, be distracted, whatever. But deep down, like, whatever that kid wants, he's or she is gonna get. So what's the point in stopping the tirade, the tantrum or whatever? Because the fact, like, why not? So this is why hell is important. Because given a couple of primary premises, number one would be the eternality of the soul. If you believe that the soul is eternal and that your existence in heaven is predicated on one choice that you make, you get an eternal existence of rest and pleasure because of one decision you make, then that means that not making that decision, not choosing salvation, not coming to repentance, then that would also have eternal opposite consequences. That's just basic, simplified logic. Because the fact that a person who chooses not to come to repentance, who continues in sin, is not just making one choice with eternal consequences, but they're making a continuous cycle of decisions that would have eternal significance to them. So, another thing is the fact that you don't understand what it means to go to heaven. If the logic is that because I've been a good person, there's the meme that floats around of Bill Gates that he gave millions and millions of dollars, maybe even billions, to help poor and downtrodden people, and yet still goes to heaven anyway because he's not a Christian. The thing is, the underlying sentiment there is that through the giving of money, he's bought a ticket to heaven. That's the idea. And so the idea is that you can buy a ticket. It's like Disneyland, essentially, that you just buy your way in. And that if you pay a little more, then you get to have a fast pass. And you pay a little more, then you can have an annual pass. You pay a little more, you can come and go whenever you want. You pay a little more, you can get backstage access. You pay a little more, pay a little more, and that's the way heaven works, but it's not. Heaven is where God resides. And in the same way that I have a front door and a back door on my home, and not just anybody is allowed in, there's a limited access. That just some random person that I do not know cannot come into my home and find welcome there. And I mean, now I live in a conservative state. I used to live in California where, there's not really any repercussions. But this is a conservative state now where I live. And I mean, you knock on the wrong door, you're going to be greeted with a shotgun blast, probably. That simple fact is that you just can't go anywhere that you want. You're not welcome anywhere that you choose or that you please. Same thing is true with God, where Jesus said in Matthew 7 that, "Depart from me, I never knew you." The same terminology there of intimacy that is found where we're talking about the way that Adam knew his wife and then brought along Cain and Abel and everything. There's an intimacy that you need to have with God to be welcome in heaven. And you have to have a relation in the same way that you need to have a relationship with me, my wife, in order to be welcome here in this home. So the thing about it is that we love to focus on you never feel pain again, you get to feel pleasure, rest, and comfort for the rest of eternity, that we like to imagine heaven as this never-ending golf course where you always hit it hole in one, or you get to practice your driver, your putt, practice your 7-10 splits or whatever, that you just get to bowl, you get to enjoy relax by the side of the pool for the rest of your life. You get to spend time with your loved ones. All those things are essentially and inherently idolatrous. That's not what heaven is. Heaven is you get to be with God. That's the thing. That's why marriages fail a lot, because they think that we get to live in as just a married couple. You just get to be married for the rest of your life. And no, you get to be married to someone. You get to, like, I get to be with my wife. So anytime that I have free time, I want to be with her. So I seek entertainment that she will enjoy, because I know, like, it's something that we can do together. Like, that's what intimacy is, and that's the reason why not everyone is permitted into heaven. So now you just have to philosophically deal with, if not everyone is welcome in heaven, then what happens to them otherwise? And because the Bible is replete with the forever and ever and ever statements regarding hell, there's no room for annihilationism. There's no clock. There's no purgatory, because there's nothing even remotely mentioning the idea of a purgatory in the Bible, which means there's only one space left, and that's hell. So, I don't know if that cleared anything up, but if you have any more questions, feel free to ask them. I'll do my best to answer anything that you bring. And anyway, that's why the hell.